Hello there, I am Taylor, and you are listening to the Surviving Maine Podcast. Back in 2019, 19 people gathered in Maine to play a fan-made version of Survivor, and I got to turn that experience into a web series while I was hiding from COVID in 2020. Back in 2019, though, I was just making a podcast about a show that didn't exist yet. I interviewed 9 players and the creator of Surviving Maine long before we ever saw any footage from the season, and I was lucky enough to get to have a very long conversation with the 4th person voted out of the game. So if you haven't watched episode 4 yet, a Broadway show in Vegas, then stop listening now, right now, because you're about to listen to my interview with Patrick, aka Tricky. So, first of all, thank you for doing this.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I mean, you've reached the end of your journey when you finally podcast about it, right?
That's how it works. Yeah, that's what I hear. So, Tricky, let me start with when you arrived that first day, what were your first impressions of other people?
My first impressions of other people. So I think when we have to talk first impressions, we have to start with us facing the woods. And I remember because I came in and I thought, oh man, I am super late. I had just got off the road. Everyone's standing there. I'm like, I am probably the last person there. So I feel like, oh man, I'm already on everyone's shit list. I'm about to get in like a lot of trouble. Everyone's going to see me as like the person who doesn't really care. But then as like more people showed up, I'm like, okay, this is getting good. This is getting good. I'm not the worst person. And then when Karen didn't show up at all, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not the worst anymore.
You're not Karen, so.
I am totally not Karen. And can I just say, thank God for Karen, because Karen really played a role in uniting the Lombard tribe. I think without Karen, I think our dynamic really would have been different, because Karen was just like the person we rallied against. And I feel like if we didn't have Karen, we would have just rallied against each other. So thank you, Karen, for not showing up.
That's really interesting that because Karen didn't show up, you guys, it made you more united in a way, and you were just joking about Karen.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's what's weird about the Lombard is that I feel like we have the Skitters, you could kind of tell the people who were just the confrontational ones. There were a lot of big alpha guys just like looking to seize control. But when I measured up the Lombards, it was kind of like we were the extras in a way. And I think because we weren't really trying to take control of anything in the beginning, we got a chance to bond more.
When you say extras, what do you mean?
Well, when I say extras, it means like none of us were like the most physically fit or the smartest. It seemed like we were all just like middle of the road players. Like no one had really like the one characteristic that defined them. Whereas like you have a Forrest who's just like, oh, that's the big strong guy. And then you have, I believe it was Michael. You're like, okay, that's the smart super fan.
Right.
But when it came to the Lombards, no one really had a unique quality that defined them.
So you mean extras like wandering around a movie set, like in the background?
In a way, yes. And I think that's what made us so threatening, is because no one really saw us as like this big threatening force. They're just like, okay, they don't really have anything I need to worry about. So let me just talk and work with them, and I can have them improve my game. Whereas we're all banding together, and then that's what makes us a real force.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling.
No, that's great. Ramble away. So What about when you first you were going on that walk and you got lost, headed to camp for the first time? What were you playing the game at that point?
I was playing the game. And here's the thing, like I went into this game and I was trying to be as 100% honest and truthful as I could. You would think with the name Tricky, that's completely opposite, but no, my brand has always been loyalty, and so
Oh,
that
that's very
walk,
David Wright of you.
yeah, you're very David, right? David, I'm coming for you. But yeah, no, what I tried to do at the beginning, I was playing the game, and I tried talking to as many people as possible, just like not like long in-depth conversations, not like strategy, but just like who are you? Do you seem like a good person? Do you seem like someone who's going to work well with me? Um, and this is where I really started noticing like people like getting frustrated because as we were walking, like I'm not an outdoorsy person, so going out into the woods, I'm just like, oh my god, this is amazing. I've never done this before. This is incredible. You think I'm gonna die? Um, but then you could see the people who were just like the more physically fit and like had done this before. Like I believe Nick was getting a little annoyed. Jazz was getting a little annoyed. Um, Sarah like had a great time. Like she just made lighthearted of it. Um, and one person I noticed in particular who was getting a little annoyed was Becca. And this is where I noticed Becca because um, Becca to me at first I thought Becca had like a chip on her shoulder. I really thought like Becca was kind of the person that she could fight back. And I thought that was good because I thought, okay, if she's going to take a couple of bullets, then that'll protect me. But as I got to know Becca and as time went on and things started to get better, Becca uh, really ingratiated herself and she was just loved by everyone. I love Becca to this day. But yeah, during that walk, the people I really feel like I connected with were was Becca. I connected with Becca. I connected with Jess, and I connected with Brandon. I really thought at the beginning there was going to be a chance that me, Jess, and Brandon could really make some kind of trio.
Mm-hmm. Did you do anything to try to get that rolling?
Yes, I did. At the challenge where we had the slingshot for immunity, where Jazz and Nick were doing the slingshot. This is where I feel like my game really started to unravel. This was the first mistake I made. So this was the immunity challenge before the end of the first night. So Nick and Jazz were working on the slingshot, and they were just falling behind, and Skitter was just like running down the field every which way. That's why when we were winning challenges, I was just like, okay, this is unexpected, but I'll take it. Now, the thing when it came to this was that in that challenge, it was like the first time I felt very nervous. And coming into this game, I really just wanted to feel safe and secure. So I tried to find people I could trust as soon as possible. I just wanted to be safe for that first vote. Because I even said this in my opening statements, is that I'm either going to go out really early or I'm going to go far. I at no point when I started this game thought I would actually win because I had a feeling that A, no one would ever let me win, and B is just I don't know if I could play a game where people would respect it at the end. I think it goes down to the fact I would play a game hoping to get far, but not a game to win. But back to the challenge. So at that first challenge, when Jazz and Nick were falling behind, I was getting very nervous because I'm like, oh man, we're gonna have to vote someone out. I better get some safety. And me, Jess, and Brandon, we were working on the totem
Mm-hmm.
uh, with the ropes. And so as we're falling behind, I whispered to Brandon because from the walk, I got a very good opinion of Brandon. I felt like I could trust Brandon. Um, and Brandon is just like a really nice guy. Like there was no point when I was talking to Brandon, I'm like, I don't believe he could cut me. And if he did, I feel like it'd be in a way where I would end up understanding. But I whispered to him and I'm like, so I get a good feeling of you. I feel like I can trust you. How would you feel about you, me, and Jess? And he said to me, which I thought was smart on his case, but really put me in a worrisome position. Was he said, I want to wait till after the challenge. And that's when it clicked in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm playing too fast now.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
playing too fast. Okay. So at that point, I did not mention anything to Brandon again. At that point, I just figured we're kind of, I'm going to ease off. We'll pick it up later. But yeah, that's who my three were going in. And believe it or not, now that the game is over, Brandon and Jess are actually two of the most closest people I talk to.
Nice. Okay, so you said you noticed your first big mistake was when you realized and had that self-awareness that you were maybe playing a little too hard too fast.
Yes.
And that was at that first challenge. Was there anything else that you did afterwards? Because you guys won the challenge and you didn't have to vote anybody out. Was there anything you did that night, the rest of the day, to try to remedy that or try to like maybe stay under the radar?
See, that night, I feel like I didn't really do anything too damning. Um, when we started up camp, I thought I was a hard worker. I mean, I cleaned, I carried the stuff. Me and Becca, we were working very hard to make fire, and we were very close a couple of times to getting it started. But Nick came in and he had more experience, and so we're like, if you know how to make the fire, then go ahead, man. We're not going to stop you. Um, and yeah, we just spent a lot of time at the fire that night, just bonding,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just having such a good time. Like that first night, it's one of my favorite nights, just because I enjoyed everyone's story, and everyone was just doing like some little quirky thing to help out, like like Tony, we were sitting at the campfire and Tony's in his sleeping bag right behind the benches. So if someone needs to get up and like go to the bathroom or get another log, we're almost stepping on Tony. Um, and so we're just like, oh man, do we just step on him and he'll sleep through it, or do we try and avoid it? But it was just like really, it was random, but I loved it. I actually at the fire, I was falling asleep just because I had driven in from Rhode Island more that morning. So I'm like, I've been up since like 5. I'm exhausted. I just did all these challenges, and so I'm falling asleep, just going uh, until it got to the point like I'm just like, someone go to bed so I don't have an excuse.
Yeah.
And that's when Nick and Jess went over, and Brandon, they started sleeping in the shelter, and I'm like, thank God. Um, but this is where I'm told, at least by Jazz, that this is where I made one of my mistakes. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I could understand it now. So I talked to Jazz, and she said, I felt like you were really close with Nick, just because we had slept next to each other in the shelter, which at that point wasn't the case. I had barely talked at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was mostly aligned with Becca because after the immunity challenge, I wanted to make sure I was very safe, very secure. So I had talked to Becca about starting a uh, two-person alliance, me and her. She was my ride or die. I was planning on taking Becca all the way to the end, just because I felt like I could trust her, and I felt like people were kind of blowing her off, and I'm like, that's not cool.
Mm.
At least that was my perception. Everyone, I feel like by the time I was gone, loved Becca.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jazz had mentioned I felt like you were really close with Nick, and I just thought that was surprising. I'm like, I have not said two words to the guy. How can we assume this? But needless to say, after the game, though, the real reason they said they thought it was close is because me and Nick, at the time I wasn't aware of it, is that we knew the game more so, and we're openly talking about it than
Right.
other players. Like Nick had just come off of Survivor Buffalo, and he was talking about like winners and players and constantly referring to the idol. And at that point, I wasn't too worried about it because I'm like, I mean, like, we don't know where this idol is. I mean, we're rarely at camp. Who's going to find it? And yeah, I just wasn't worried about Nick. But I was liking Nick because I'm like, oh, he gets why we're out here. And it's really surprised me, like, coming out of this experience, how many hidden super fans there were.
Yes.
Like I'm really shocked, and that's where I felt like I made mistake number 2. So mistake number 1 was strategizing too early. Mistake number 2 was underestimating the level of super fans in just the Lombard tribe, because everyone was a super fan, and they hit it so well. I felt like I felt coming in that I had to expect that, because I know, like, if you can't get on Real Survivor, you're sure as hell going to play a fan Survivor. And that's where, like, I really, really thought, okay, we can openly discuss this. We can openly say that we're fans. And no, everyone else just wasn't doing that. But Nick and I were just like, oh yeah, remember this time, remember that time. And it was mostly just like bonding. It wasn't strategy related. It was just talking for the sake of talking. Because, I mean, it was the first night out, and we won immunity. We're all hopped up on pancake syrup and good cheer. And yeah, that's where I made mistake number 2. And what really surprised me were the sleepers. Like, I kind of thought Jess was there for the experience. I didn't peg her too much as a super fan.
Mm-hmm.
She just seemed really out there for the experience, and I respected that. I thought that was very brave of her. I mean, God knows I wouldn't do anything like that.
If you weren't a super fan. Now that you know her outside of the game, is that true? She was just there for the experience? She wasn't a big Survivor watcher?
I mean, based on what I've talked to her about, she's become more engrossed after the show. But yeah, I think at the time she was pitched by a friend who saw it on Facebook, and so she's just like, oh, this seems like fun. I'm just coming off of military training.
Yeah. So
let me give this a shot. And now I feel that after coming out of this, she has become more of a super fan. The real sleepers that surprised me after finding out, Brandon was a huge surprise for me. I did not expect that at all from Brandon.
Wow.
Because he hit it so well. Yeah. It was not funny. And now he posts about Monica Culpepper at the airport. And I just text him back, and I'm like, you did not just meet Monica Culpepper.
I know.
Another big surprise sleeper that surprised me was Tony. Tony, I'm just going to take a chunk of time just to talk about Tony.
Go for it.
All right. So Tony and I don't know. Tony and I feel like never really had any relationship, but I can respect the hell out of Tony. I can respect Tony just because when we came on, Tony just seemed like the one person that didn't fit in. He was super quiet. He was doing his own thing. And at the time, just because I was super paranoid about going home early, I really pushed hard. I pushed hard to try and get Tony to be the first boo
Yeah.
because in my mind it's already clicking. I'm like, we're here 4 days, and so if we don't take him out soon, he's going to make it to the end. And I felt like people, because of the short time frame, were already thinking about the end game. They
Mm-hmm.
were already trying to solidify that. And so that's what I tried to do as well with Becca. But Tony, he was doing just quiet things, just not really socializing. But there are moves he did make in the game that I felt like were very respectable. Um, for example, the morning before our first challenge. So this is second day in the morning. We got told to gather up our stuff, and we're like, okay, we're probably gonna swap. So we better get all our stuff ready. There's probably an idol around here. So let's go try and find it. And so me and Tony were walking in the woods, and Tony's just like, I will trust you no matter what. I'm with you guys. At that point, we had already formed an alliance between myself, Jazz, Sarah, um, Becca, Tony.
Okay.
And so that was five of the nine. And so he says, I'm loyal no matter what. And so we're looking for the idol, and out of nowhere, Tony's just gone. He's gone. I cannot find him. And at that point, he's doubled back to camp. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, he just left me to take the fall. And you know what? At that point, I'm like, well, I'm already searching for this thing. I may as well go for it. And I felt like at that time he was trying to put the target on me, because I think Tony felt the heat a little bit, and he was trying any which way to get it off of him. Um, but yeah, that was one thing. And another time where I really respected Tony was at my vote out, where I mean, at my vote out, I was an absolute paranoid, nervous wreck. Anyone can tell you, I was just so beside myself. And at that point, I'm like, there's no other way. I'm going to go. I'm the next target. And Tony just came up to me because I don't know. I think he might have thought like this would be a all person jury, so everyone who left the game would be in the jury.
Uh-huh.
And he just came up to me and he's just like, "Hey, you want to talk?" And I'm like, "I don't know if there's anything to talk about." He's just like, "Well, I'm here. Just let me know if you need anything." And I'm like, and I thought, this is jury management, but you know what? Damn it, if I don't need a time like this just to feel like someone doesn't hate me.
Yeah. Wow, good on Tony.
Good on Tony. You know what? I feel like Tony was a super surprise super fan for me. Tony, I feel like his moves weren't big and flashy, but you know what? Do I like Tony coming out of this season? Absolutely.
Okay. Let's go back to day 2.
Okay.
When you guys lose your first immunity challenge that day.
Oh, okay. Okay. This is, we can't talk about this until we talk about mistake number 3.
Tell us about mistake number 3 from Tricky.
So Tricky's mistake number 3 was getting Jazz not to trust him anymore. So let's start off with the morning. We begin in the morning and we're searching for the idol. Cam and Nick and Jess, they've gone off to the bathroom, and everyone else at camp just believes they're searching for the idol. They're probably going to find it. They're going to have some power. So we might as well rally against them. And at that point, everyone's doing their confessionals. They're sitting around camp, and Jazz in particular, Jazz at that point was just very paranoid. She's just like, they're gonna pick us off. They're gonna take us out one by one.
Jazz is saying this about Cam, Jess, and someone else.
Yeah, and Nick, because at that time Nick was gunning for Jazz.
Okay.
Nick realized Jazz was a huge threat, and she was so likable. I mean,
is that what made her a threat to Nick?
Yes, I've talked to Nick about this. Nick believed that Jazz was going to get the people on her side because she had a way of just bringing you in. Jazz has a way just to be real with you, which is something I really respect. If you can be 100% honest with me, I can respect you and will be loyal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I knew, because that night, pretty much Sarah and Jazz were inseparable. And looking back on it now, makes sense. But yeah, they were inseparable. And Jess was saying Brandon's getting really close to Jazz as well. And so Nick was just like, oh, she's getting friends, she's getting allies, so I got to take her out.
Okay.
And so, yeah, Jazz at that point, I think, kind of felt the heat. And so she's saying she was getting a little paranoid. So I had pitched them just to put her at ease because I didn't want her, like, frazzling before the next challenge. Just say, hey, to put your mind at ease, let's create this alliance of you, me, Becca, Tony, and Sarah. And they went for it. Jazz felt so much more comfortable. Her mind was at ease. And everyone else were really just like feeling comfortable. Now, what I had not expected was her to tell Brandon. So after after Skitter had lost their second immunity challenge, we were going off to the little field off to the side, so we didn't view it. And she had asked me, she's like, how are you feeling about the next vote? Who are you thinking? And Brandon is walking with her, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like we should get rid of Tony just because. And all of a sudden, my Jazz is just like, what about our plan we had before? And I'm looking at Brandon, and I'm looking at Jazz. I'm like, does he know? She's like, yeah, she know. Yeah, he knows. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, totally. Then we are going for Nick. We are going for Nick. And at that point,
so then that makes her sketched out by you.
She was so sketched out. At that point, like, I never fully got Jazz's trust back, and I was trying so hard to explain. I'm like, no, I didn't know. I promise. I am not flipping. I am not going to their side.
You were just trying not to give away the plan to someone you didn't know was in on the plan, in Brandon.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. Man. And that's what I felt like. But I also feel, at looking back on it now, and this was a great move by Jazz, because talking to everyone afterwards, like Sarah said, you knew too much of the game. You and Nick knew too much, so we had to get rid of you. So I felt like this was Jazz looking for a way to cut me, get Brandon in, and then she takes out two threats in me and Nick.
Mm-hmm.
And so, while I feel like it helped her game incredibly, because at that point, I think the well was starting to get poisoned for me. She brings in a new person, I get cut, but I got to tell you, after that conversation, I felt so terrible because I knew I felt terrible just because, like, I'm not trying to vote you out. I'm not turning on you. I swear I'm not. And I just felt she just never trusted me. And she even, like, at one point mentioned, I don't trust you. And I'm like, tried this game to be nothing but honest and loyal. And the fact that you don't trust me is, I get it. Trust me, I get it. I'm not, looking back on it, I'm not hurt now, but in the game, it's just, it cut really deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were there any other conversations you had at that time when this was before you had ever lost any immunity challenges that second day?
Yes, there were. I shared all my plans with Becca. Becca, as I mentioned, was my ride or die. I wanted Becca in every single plan I was making. I wanted to make her feel as comfortable as possible with me. What I didn't anticipate was how fast I was throwing information at her. So, for example, after we had set up the alliance, Sarah was in a confessional, and Becca had said, "Oh, let's let Jazz recruit Sarah into this, and we'll be fine." Sarah gets back, and we're thinking any second now this challenge is going to happen. We're going to need to go. And Jazz still hadn't talked to her. I believe it was because they didn't want to seem too close. So I go over to the shelter and I sit next to Sarah and I'm just whispering like, hey, here's the plan. And she's like, okay, I'm down. I immediately run over and just whisper it to Becca as we're making the pancakes. Then next thing I know, Cam is coming back, and oh God, Cam is another one. I felt like I trashed really hard in the game, not like verbally, but Cam was just. I had to pin the blame on someone, and unfortunately, Cam was my target.
What do you mean?
So Cam comes up to me and he said, "Hey, there looks like there's a mauled dead animal. There's fur all over the ground. Let's go take a look."
Oh, God.
And so I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? And at that time, him, Nick, and Jess were talking about inviting me into the group, getting me as another number. At this point, Nick and Cam and Jess have not talked strategy to me. They had not included me in any strategic thought, and it was right before the first challenge. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. And plus I had already promised Jazz and Sarah like 10 minutes beforehand. So I'm like, dude, you're too late, man. You're too late. But you never say that. You don't say, by the way, I'm with another alliance. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm with Becca, so we'll see what happens. But okay. I'm like, yeah, why not? So I'm planting in their head that I'm gonna flip, and then the minute I get back, I'm running over to Becca and saying, "Hey, these two Cam just approached me and told me this."
Mm-hmm. Who did they want to vote out?
So the first target was Nick, because everyone was scared of Nick. Nick knew the game. Nick was looking for the idol, and Nick was really strong in challenges.
Yeah.
We knew the minute we were going to hit a merge, he was going to take off running.
So this is the group of you, Becca, Sarah, Jazz,
and Tony.
And Tony wanted to get out Nick. So then who were Nick, Cam, and Jess saying?
They were targeting Jazz.
Jasmine. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's who Nick wanted out. Okay. It's all coming together.
Yeah, so needless to say, this first tribal council, we were going to lose a big player. It wasn't because Jazz's whole philosophy was think about the long-term game. Think about the end game. And at that point, I was thinking, yeah, we can think about the end game, but it's not going to matter if we go into this merge and we're down numbers.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep Nick a little bit longer, and maybe cut him before the tribe swap, just because he was strong in challenges, and I feel like maybe some of these other guys, there were a couple of people I thought maybe could have flipped. I think if we had reached a swap, I thought maybe Sarah or Jess or Cam would have flipped. So I think maybe we should target some of these flippers. I didn't mention it, but it was mostly just an opinion I observed.
Okay. So, I mean, that makes sense for Jasmine to, even though I agree with you that Nick, being one of the strongest members of your tribe, you should have kept him around a little longer. Especially when it gets closer to the merge, that's who the target is. You don't want him to get to the merge. So, but then if Jasmine knows that that Nick is going after her, then yeah, I understand, like, that's who she's going to want to go after. What I don't understand is how she got everyone else to agree with her.
Well, at that point, like, Sarah and Tony were also feeling very paranoid. Tony, I could swear, felt the heat on him. Sarah, there were a couple of discussions in that early days about getting rid of Sarah, just because people weren't really sure where her allegiances were. She was kind of keeping to herself. And so that's why I wanted to keep Sarah, because Sarah, I felt like, was so charming.
Yeah.
Sarah was also like a person I maybe could have used to bring in other people. What I didn't know is that she was that tightly aligned with Jazz, and I didn't see it till like it was way too late. I'm like, I didn't see how close they were, and then once, like, Sarah, I'm out of the game, and Sarah messages me. She's like, "Me and Jazz were best friends," and I'm like, "Are you serious?" Yeah, but there was definitely going to be a big loss in the first round where we ever went to tribal.
So that when you lost that first challenge that you lost, the immunity challenge that you lost, there was some crazy scrambling going on for a good hour, where every name was thrown out pretty much. Tell me about the conversations you had.
Okay, so we have to remember, going into this first vote, Jazz already doesn't trust me. She thinks I'm aligned with Nick.
Yes.
She thinks I'm trying to get out Tony, and the well is already starting to get poisoned. When Liza said you have the ability to look at the challenge and kind of direct, me and Nick go over just to try and help the team. He's whispering to me. He's like, "I'm thinking about getting out Jazz. Are you in?" And I had promised Jazz. I said, "Oh man, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. But I'll tell you who's really starting to sketch me out is Cam. Cam approached me in the woods, and he's telling me, you guys want to start an alliance? And he's like, yeah, I want to start an alliance, and I'm loyal to the people." And at that point, like, it was too late. It was too late. The plan was in place, and we were just so... The conversations Nick was having with people were so last second and so intense. It was just turning people off. So, I mean, I was trying every which way to throw the vote off of Jazz, and see if I could get Cam maybe as the target, and then something will happen and we change it. I did not want Nick or Cam to go, but I had to throw the scent off myself and Jazz any way I could. And then it just spiraled. Because at that point, Jazz, I remember, was on the bench, and she was like staring at me and Nick. And I would like run over. I'm like, "Listen, I know what you saw. I swear it is not like that." And that's when she told me, "I don't trust you."
Okay.
And I pretty much, anytime Nick or Jess or Cam were coming over to me, I was like running back to Jazz and telling her the plan. But she had no trust for me whatsoever. And the entire time, like, Nick is scrambling so hard. Jazz is scrambling so hard. Cam is scrambling so hard. And then my name is coming up because everyone thinks I'm flip-flopping around. And I remember the entire time I'm just feeling more and more and more worse about myself and more terrible. It was truly an emotional vote. Like, after this vote, I was entirely drained for the rest of the game. My emotional capital was spent. But
This
I
is
just
after
felt so
voting out.
bad.
This is after voting out Nick.
Yeah, after voting out Nick, like my emotional capital was spent. I was pretty much not in the game. I was hanging on by like a thread, and I was trying every which way. But going back beforehand, Nick is scrambling, Jazz is scrambling, Sarah had come up, Cam had come up, and like I really was starting to feel it because at one point Nick and Jazz had talked about getting rid of Maine, and I like pretty much threw myself on my knees. I'm like, please don't do this. I swear to God, I am with you 100%. And I remember like I had a long conversation with Brandon because I knew he was close with Brandon. And I explained the situation, and I'm like, listen, she thinks I'm flipping, and I promise you I'm not. That conversation was before I knew you were in. I am not planning on moving anywhere. And thank God for Brandon, because I think had he not gone and talked to Jazz, I would have been done that first round. I really do.
Okay.
And I remember before that, I had a long conversation, and I could see the gears starting to turn in Becca's head, where she knew I was a sinking ship, and she knew she had to cut me loose soon. And I'm like, listen, they all think this is what's happening. This isn't what's happening. And she's like, I believe you. And I truly believe Becca did believe me, but she knew like my number was coming up, so she had to start disassociating. But going in, I remember I had said to Jazz before the Nick vote, I'm like, I'm going to make you believe I am still with you guys. And so we go in, and I am quiet that entire tribal council. I am hoping to God that Liza doesn't call my name. I'm sitting there in the stool. My head is hung down. I'm just feeling so scared, paranoid, and just generally bad because Nick wanted to stay in the game so bad. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. And who knows, maybe I'm about to go out too. Jazz, I knew, was absolutely safe. No one was voting Jazz. But yeah, I just knew like this is going to be a big vote.
Hey, wait. When at that vote, you're talking about the Nick Tribal Council still, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
who did he decide to target then at that one? If you know,
Nate.
you. Oh no.
Yeah, no, because I talked to Nick about this pretty much the minute I mentioned Cam's name, because Cam and Nick were tightly aligned, and they were not going to betray each other no matter what. Cam ran over to Nick, and he's like, hey, Nick ran over to Cam, and he's like, hey, this is what happened. And Cam is saying, well, we got to get rid of Tricky. There's no other way. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I received a vote at every single tribal council I went to. So
Nick and Cameron and Jess voted for you?
yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was a strange turn, but Nick was trying so hard to stay in, and I felt so bad. Like as I'm going to vote, because I was one of the last votes, I walked up the steps really slowly because I'm like, I'm just going to take my time and let him enjoy every second he has left in this game. So I go into the booth, I write down Nick, and I'm on the verge of tears at this point. I'm like choking up, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you are a great guy, Nick. You really are awesome, and I wish things had worked out, but Jazz just got to me first.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, I went down, and I just sat there, and everyone, and Jazz and Sarah is looking at me, and Jazz is asking, did you do it? And I'm like, and I just nodded my head sadly, and she's like, good.
But that, I guess, wasn't enough to win her trust of you.
This is where mistake number 4 comes into play. So after the Nick vote, as I mentioned, my emotional capital was spent. My head was not in the game. I was paranoid because I had just received 3 votes, and I'm like, I'm the next target. No one who gets votes at a previous tribal council really lives to see past the next one. So there were only two options. I get someone else to take the fall, or we win the immunity challenge. And freaking Justin in his broken neck winning the challenge
Yeah.
assured me I was probably going to go home. But Jazz has came over to me, and I think she had started to turn around, believing I was in on the plan. But at that point, I was so scared about going home. I was so scared because after my vote, we were going to be at 15. I thought for sure, we were going to probably swap tribes at 16. So when the swap didn't happen, I'm thinking, oh, we're just going to ride out to the merge in our teams. We're not swapping at all. And so at that point, I'm like, we need to win the next challenge if I'm going to stay alive and we're going to be strong by the merge. And so she comes over to me and she says, who do you feel about getting rid of? And I had told her, I'm like, listen, I just got 3 votes. I am very scared. I am very paranoid. And frankly, I don't want this power you're giving me. I don't want to make the call because I pretty much just threw Nick under the bus. I threw Cam under the bus. I threw a lot of people out under the bus just to survive this one vote. Like, please don't make me make this call. Don't make me have any more blood on my hands. But she was very persistent. She's like, I want a name. I want a name. And I'm like, and this is where I feel like Jazz really was starting to shine. Like, and I give her full credit for this. This is not a slight against Jazz in any way. Anyway, this is her, I think, playing her peak game and who knows, maybe it's just because I'm on the receiving end of the vote. But I felt at that point she was going to cut me, moving Brandon into my spot. And she was aligning all her people for the merge. And she was testing me whether or not she could really trust me. And would I be able to follow orders, or would I have gone off and do my own thing? Now, she's asking me this question. And at the time, it did feel kind of like a test. I'm like, I can't say I know what the right answer is. The right answer is say, Jess is next. At that point, I'm still holding out hope. Holding out hope that me and Jess can somehow align, and me, Becca, and Cam, we can do something in the next.
Wow. Okay.
We're hoping we can do something. And so I don't want to say Jess's name. So I'm saying anything to try and get her off my case. I'm like, please don't make me make this call. This is just something I don't want a part of. I will do whatever you ask. Just please let me get this blood off my hands. But she really pushed. She's like, tell me a name. And I said, I had to be 100% honest at that point because I know I'm in trouble. And so if I'm going to go out, I'm going to be honest. And so I said, I feel like we need to win the next challenge. We need to win. We just lost one of our strongest guys. And so if we keep losing strong people, we're not going to make this merge. We're not even going to make a swap. And so I said, I would hold out hope voting for Tony. I said Tony because I really thought that Tony was going to really slow us down the challenge because he had already taken a lot of time in the previous challenge where we had to have the balance beam on the logs.
Yeah.
And he was untying knots. And granted, they were super tight knots, but he kept putting his legs on the stand, and Liza had to keep resetting him, and Forrest was all over us.
Yeah.
Which good move on Forrest's part. I'm like, there's probably 10 he didn't catch. But I'm like, Tony's going to keep slowing us down. We need to cut some bait with him.
Whereas Jess really did well in that challenge.
Jess did amazingly in that challenge. And I really feel in that vote, I don't think Jess would have gone. I think either way, I was still a target. But it was mostly a test of Jazz on me to see if I had said Jess, and maybe she could have pulled some strings to get rid of another person.
Yeah.
But the answer I gave was not what she wanted to hear. And at that point, I knew like any power I had left in this game was absolutely gone. There was no scrambling. No one really filled me in. I could tell when they were just kind of yesing me. At that point, I'm like, I'm done. I'm finished.
So you knew this was not a blind side.
This was not a blind side whatsoever. I knew it was me walking to my death. I mean, I tried every which way to ingratiate myself. Like I talked to me and Sarah had a really long heart-to-heart, which I still remember. And I will say this about Sarah. Sarah's key strength comes from her listening abilities. Because I'm emotionally spent. I'm walking around. I'm just like this depressed mess. And I made another mistake in the previous tribal council. So going back just 1 second, one of the key things I said to Jazz to kind of put the target on Nick, and this is probably the thing I regret the most about the game I played, was that I told Jazz, Nick is targeting you because he feels like you're not going to be a key asset in challenges.
Oh.
And that just set Jazz off. But I knew I had to get this target off me somehow and put it on Nick. And I believe they compared stories and they knew I was lying.
Was that was that day one that you said this to Jazz?
No, this was during the Nick vote out.
Okay.
Before we went to vote out Nick.
Okay, and he did not say that.
He did not. I said that in order to get the target off of me and onto Nick.
Okay.
And that just set Jazz off. And I believed her and Nick compared stories, and they knew I was lying. And at that point, I believe that one comment ruined my game, because I think that's really what put Jazz over the edge to where she couldn't trust me anymore.
Is that mistake number 5?
That's mistake number 5. My game was very much haphazard and all over the place. But let's get back to Sarah now. That was just one comment. And I had talked to Sarah and I said, there are a lot of things I've done today I really, really regret. And a lot of people I burned very hard today, including Jazz and Nick. And I just felt, as a person, I felt like such a piece of trash, because I had come in and I tried to be as likable and nice as possible and just play a clean, honest, maybe not totally honest. There's got to be a couple of tricks, but tried to play the best social game I could. But I felt like along the way, I burned more and more than I intended to, because I was under the gun. And I'm like, I have to shift this any way I could. But I talked to Sarah, and we just talked about things I've done, things I wish I'd done. And she had said to me, I think she was starting to tear up a bit, but she's just like, you're a good person. And Sarah's one comment really helped me, because at that point I was getting ready to cry. I was so depressed. And even Tony came up to me. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I'm next. I know. He's like, "Is there anything I can do?" And he's like, and at that point I knew I didn't have the numbers to do a vote out of Jazz. And
now you wanted to get out Jazz?
No, for this vote, so when I originally came to this vote, I wanted to see if I could target Jazz, because I knew Jazz was coming after me.
Yeah.
I knew Jazz wanted me out. So the grand scheme was get out Tony. Then I can pick up Jazz with Cam and Becca as my ride or die ally.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could stage a vote out of Jasmine in the next vote. But unfortunately, the well was poisoned for me. There was no way I could assemble something. My hope was just live through this vote, and then we can pick up the pieces. But unfortunately, there was just no way. I could tell everyone had kind of shut me off, and Becca really, Becca, I felt like was fully in the Jazz camp. There was no way she was gonna tell me anything.
Mm.
And that's where that's the one thing I wish I mean, I love Becca, but the one thing I really wish she had done was just had been honest with me. I knew at that point there was nothing I could do. There was no vote out I could pull together to get someone else out. My one hope was get out Tony.
Mm-hmm. And that's who you voted for?
That's who I voted for, but no one else was going for it. But I really wish Becca had just said, hey, I enjoyed playing with you, but unfortunately this is what it is. And I coming out of that tribal council where I was voted out, Becca's vote hurt me the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, that entire tribal council, I mean, granted, I knew I was going, but I sure as hell wasn't going down without a fight. I wasn't giving up. So when Liza is asking and she's saying, oh, do we feel like this is going to be a live vote? Is this a lot of scrambling? And everyone's just like, no, we pretty much know. I'm like, yeah, because it's for me. I know. But she knew I was paranoid about the vote. And so she asked me, like, you worried about that? And I really thought that maybe this is my chance. Maybe I can put myself in such a bad position that people will kind of keep me as a goat, like as a person who keep absorbing votes for them as we go on. I mean, I've already gone 3 at the previous tribal council. What the hell's a couple more? Come my way.
That's not a bad strategy.
And so when she asked me, I said, I've got a couple of votes. I mean, to the people who might think about getting rid of me, they are opening the door up to getting votes themselves. I mean, the strategy could keep me. I absorb a couple of more votes, and you get to live to see another day. And at that point, like, who knows? Maybe I get dragged to the final 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get the faithful votes. I grab that torch as Liza calls me up. And you know what? I remember getting that torch and I was so numb. I was numb for like a few minutes. And then it's going to be weird. I was happy. I was happy because I got to play the game.
Okay.
And based on like my past couple of years, the fact that I did anything like this was truly an astounding feat. And the love I had for the entire Lombard tribe, and the fact that they were playing so hard, it made me proud. I was proud. So I go in and slide my torch into the slot, and I'm just like, you know what? If I'm going out, I'm going to go out speaking my mind. And I just said, you know what? I am damn proud I got to play with you guys. You guys are playing hard. You're playing to win. And you know what? As a person who respects game, I can respect you. And especially in that point when Jazz voted me out, even though I had felt like I really burned her and she really did throw me under the bus a couple of times, I respected Jazz's game a lot. It was a very smart, calculating game. And it was a very, Jazz did not make me feel bad going out the door. So before we go into my tribal council, Jazz had talked to me and she's like, hey, I know you're nervous. What are you thinking? And I'm like, I know it's me. I know I'm going. There's nothing we can do. And I believe this is where she gave me one last chance. Mm-hmm. One last chance. She's like, are you still thinking Tony? And I'm like, I am. I explained myself. I'm like, we need to win this next challenge. He's not going to win it for us. And if we're not swapping, we got to stick together. I proved to you in the last Nick vote, I am not going to write your name down. I think at that vote, she genuinely knew I wasn't trying to vote her out or target her.
Mm-hmm.
I think just before that vote, she finally realized like I was not trying to get her out or burn her. But unfortunately the plan was in place.
So with that last mistake then, if you could go back, let's role play. I'm Jasmine, and I'm saying to you, hey, I know you're nervous right now.
Yep.
Are you still feeling Tony? Now what do you say?
I 100% say yes.
You do?
Still say yes.
What?
I know it's crazy, but given the point we were at in that game, I really don't think, because this was right before my vote out, I really believe there was no other way to shift that vote. Like, what happens? Is Jasmine really going to give up Jess and they're going to lose the challenge? Jess is stronger than I am. And at that point, I knew Tony was so in lock with Jazz. Same with Brandon and Sarah. I'm like, who do we get out? Because we need Cam and Jess for challenges. You're not going to give up your core allies. The only other thing is, do we sacrifice Becca? And Becca is my closest ally.
Yeah. Okay.
So I really feel like there was nothing I could do. And I know that everyone says there's a way. That's why I try my best to appeal to Jasmine the best I could. And maybe I fall more back on my sword and say, listen, because I've already told her, I'm like, I will vote for whoever you tell me to. But
you did say that.
In a perfect world where I'm here and someone else goes, who is it? And I know that's surprising, but I just I really think there was nothing I could do. What I wish I had done, looking back on it now, because there is something I could have done. It would have been a Hail Mary move, but I feel like it might have worked in the long run. Because after we voted out Nick, Jess and Cam came up to us and Cam had said to me, I didn't write your name down. And he didn't write my name down. He wrote down Jasmine's name. He had switched his vote.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, we had confirmed this. Cam had actually switched his vote to someone else, to Nick, to get Nick out.
He voted Nick. Okay.
Yeah, I never figured out who the third vote was for me, though. I think it might have been Tony, but I'm not sure. But Cam comes up to me and he said, I did not write your name down. And that's when Sarah and Jazz just like completely shut him down. They're like, don't believe him. He's lying. And my mind is just so frazzled because I got 3 votes. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? But I got the feeling my entire time in the game that Cam really wanted to work with me. And this is why I felt so bad for the way I treated Cam, because I really think Cam wanted to work with me and maybe use me as a shield, where he could win and he could just pin on me like I'm the more devious of the two. And Jess and I had a very good relationship in the game. We were just very friendly with each other. We were just talking about everyday things, not like a strategic gameplay, but just like I felt like we genuinely trusted each other. Mm-hmm. So what I had hoped, in a perfect world, what happens is that me, Becca, Cam, and Jess get together and we target Jazz. And Tony, I believe, knowing that the heat's coming down, switches from Jazz to us. And I believe he might have, just because he was going to be on the right side. He wanted to be on the right side of the vote.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
But I feel like I had poisoned like the well so much for Cam. Like in that Nick vote out, like me and Nick, like, we were trying very hard to just get the target off each other. That I think at that time I thought Jess and Cam wanted nothing to do with me because I got rid of their strongest ally. I'm responsible for why Nick is gone. And so that's why I thought they wouldn't work with me.
One thing I noticed a lot of people, a lot of players got really emotional at different times, whether it's voting someone out or being voted out. Were you surprised by how emotional you got?
In a way, yes. I knew I would get emotional in this game. I didn't realize I'd be that emotional. I really thought that, and what was worse too is that for the people who went on the pre-merge, it was just that we didn't have, I feel like we really didn't have closure. Because a lot of people from the pre-merge were just up and leaving. Like, I know Nick was kind of disappointed in the way he left, and so that's why he chose not to stick around. And I don't blame him. After what he went through, I'm like, he dealt with a lot of people attacking him. But everyone else had gone, so there was nothing really to do there. I mean, and we were told before my vote out that Nick hadn't stuck around, and that's why I felt even worse. I was just like, I'm like, I felt bad he was gone, but I'm like, maybe there's a chance we could reconnect once the game is over. And then he was gone, and I'm like, oh man, this kid is devastated.
Yeah. Did you reconnect with him?
I reconnected with him on Facebook.
Okay.
When I got home, I found Nick on Facebook because it's the next day. I'm back in Rhode Island. The game is still going on. And I'm still thinking about my vote out. I'm still thinking about Nick. And even though I'm disappointed I lost, I'm more disappointed and sad for Nick because Nick really, really got put through the ringer. And he's such a fan.
Yeah. And
he's such a great guy. I'm like, we didn't need to put Nick through as much as we did. And so I reached out and we were just like comparing notes and talking about like different aspects of the game. And Nick, Jess, and Brandon are like the three people I keep with closest most after this game is done. And we just ended up talking, and I'm like, if it makes you feel any better, I went out after you. He's like, yeah, I kind of expected it. But yeah, we're back on good terms.
That's good. I did notice that something similar between both the Skitter and Lombard tribes was that the people who were super fans and really vocal about it were targeted first.
Right, and that's where I think like the biggest problem I had with my game is just that I didn't recognize that so soon. I just assumed we were all super fans and may the best fan win.
Yeah.
But once I saw from the Skitter tribe, I believe it was Michael.
Yes.
When Michael went out the door, I'm like, oh, okay, reevaluate. Because that's when I realized, oh, they're targeting the super fans.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was in trouble. Because me and Nick had been so open about it.
Mm-hmm. Would you play again?
The answer is yes. Yeah. I would play again, but Surviving Maine is still young. It's still young, and it needs more people in order to be diverse about it. What's good about Survivor in general is just we see constant new faces and new scenarios and new gameplay. And even though I'm a huge fan of Survivor, and like my entire game, my one goal, I just wanted to make the merge so bad. So badly. Yeah. I just wanted to make the merge, but it's not my place, I feel, to go back every single season of Surviving Maine and apply again and again and again, because I feel like if Surviving Maine truly wants me, then they would ask me. I mean,
for an All-Stars season, maybe a few years down the road.
Oh, absolutely! Yeah. I would gladly play with All-Stars. I'd love to play with Jazz again, just to show her that, hey, I'm true what I say. And who knows, maybe we're on different tribes. But in the future, yeah, if Surviving Maine wants me, I will always answer the phone, but I've got to give the other players the chance to play as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I truly think when it came to Surviving Maine, this was probably the best opportunity I've probably ever had in my past couple of years. Because, like, if you know anything about me, you know I work a lot. Because not only am I a designer, I go to school, I'm a video game developer. I mean, I work a lot. I have 2 jobs. I keep busy. And just the fact that I had the ability to go out and have this experience was just amazing.
Yeah.
It's probably an experience I might never have again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, when you see me post to, like, the Facebook group or just, like, try and give my 100% best positivity. Because, like, I remember I put this picture on the Surviving Maine page, and it was all my votes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And
you framed all your votes.
I framed all my votes. They actually sit in my cubicle at work. Everyone just comes in and they see all my memorabilia. And Nick had asked me, like, why did you keep them? Like, why wouldn't you get rid of them? I'm like, because I might never have this experience again.
Yeah.
This was such a fun and great experience. I enjoyed everyone out there. Why would I want to forget about it?
Right.
Why would I want to take it and, like, toss it in a fire or forget about it? I met so many great people, and yeah, why would I want to forget about it?
Yeah. That's a great attitude.
Yeah, people say it's sickeningly sweet, but but you know what? I try and see the best in people. That's why I felt like I couldn't turn on Jazz, because I'm trying to find the best in her instead of, like, what's best for me. Mm-hmm. Like you even said when it came to Tony, and I still say Tony. Like, it may have not been the best move, but I still believe that deep down there is a way that Jazz is going to see she can keep me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry it didn't work out for you.
Oh, that's okay. Who knows? Now, here are some things I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Oh, you spent like an hour and a half talking to me already. Here are some hopes I wanted to have for if I made the merge.
Okay.
And just opinions. So the first thing I mentioned at the beginning, I really wanted to make that merge. When I couldn't make that merge, it was absolutely devastating. I wanted so badly just to feel like I was part of the game the whole way through. You could have taken me the merge and got rid of me first. As long as I cast that vote in the end, I'm happy. Trust me, I'm happy. And yeah, I really felt like in order to get there, if I made it through my vote, so let's say Tony goes, mm-hmm. I stay. If we had gone into that tribe split, I would have gotten some more footing, because at that point I felt so uncomfortable with Jazz and everyone. I would have jumped ship. I would have flipped over to the other side. And I was kind of playing a game before where I was like ping-ponging back and forth. There was actually a time I had thought about switching fully over to Nick, Cam, and Jess and asking Becca to come with me, but I knew I couldn't betray loyalty that early in the game. Mm-hmm. But if I made it to the swap, I would have totally flipped and gone to the other side.
Like the red tribe or like the Cam
Skitters,
side?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would have flipped.
Yeah.
I would have flipped, no doubt, because I knew in my vote out, I'm like, I've lost Becca. She doesn't want anything to do with me. And I had good rapport, even though briefly, with Becky.
Yes.
So in the challenge where we're doing the nets, like I had talked to Becky and I was just joking around. I had started to feel the heat coming on, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just clown them around a bit. Maybe they'll cheer me up. And so we're standing at our post. We're getting ready to run out and grab the balls with the nets. And I'm like, and I go up to Becky. I'm like, it's nice to meet you. Sorry we couldn't meet under different circumstances. Hopefully we'll get to talk later. And I will say, Becky, I feel like out of all the skitters, Becky I thought was the most charming. Like as I examined the skitters, some people I really wanted to work with. I really wanted to work with Becky. I really wanted to work with Mike. And believe it or not, I really wanted to work with Forrest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I felt like Forrest got such a bad rap at times. And I even mentioned this in my confessional, where he was just like zooming all over the place. I'm like, is he crazy or pretending to be crazy? Because I can work with both. And,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that as like a diss at all.
No, yeah.
What I meant is that Forrest, to me, I think is so honest and truthful. It comes out as intimidating to other people because he's that straight of a shooter. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is a guy who will always tell me what's up, what's going on. And he's just got this personality that might shield me. And so I really think me and Forrest maybe could have hit something off.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people who scared me, though, in that other tribe were definitely Justin. Justin scared me. Justin, I felt like, had everything going. Same with Tony. Tony. Toby.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and Toby scared me the most. They seemed like they knew exactly where they wanted to be, who they wanted to be with at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I'm just like, I need them gone. That's why I was very hesitant to get rid of Nick, because I'm like, if we go into the merge, we got to knock these two out.
Right. Yeah.
And even Mike, I could just tell as one super fan to another, he was just happy to be there. He wanted to play so bad.
Yeah.
And I had really hoped if the cards played out, we could have started a super fan alliance where all the big, they talk about it all the time on the show, just like all the big threats get together and just pick off everyone else. But it never comes to play. I really believe had situations worked out and people have been more open about it, I really believe we could have made that super fan big threat alliance a thing.
Mm-hmm. That would have been fun to watch.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe someone's listening this next time, guys. We're just going to start the big fan alliance.
Yes.
I don't know if there's anything else. Any questions at all left for me?
I think we covered a lot.
All right. I think we might want to call this a podcast.
All right. Well, thank you for talking to me for so long.
Hey, no problem. I can't wait to hear him back. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe I've misread everything and everyone just thinks the absolute opposite. But who knows?
Who knows?
Fun, right?
Yeah. Okay, Tricky.
Hey, thanks for having me, Taylor. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
I had so much fun talking to Tricky. He really loves analyzing the game, and so do I. So that was super interesting and a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that one. It's a long one. It's actually the longest interview I did. You can follow Tricky on Twitter at Tricky Rice. You can follow me at MJT the PhD, but you should really follow Surviving Maine because that's where we put up some secret scenes from the show, stuff you won't find in the actual episodes. Now, the rest of my interviews are with the final 7 remaining players at the end of the game, so you're going to have to wait for those. But I will put out the rest of the interview I did with Liza, where she gives her kind of a cast assessment. I'll release a couple of those in between now and then. Until then, we have many more episodes of Surviving Maine, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do.